Okay, we're covering limiting excess reactant problems. This is part of that stoichiometry. So far I have one video in for stoichiometry. These are the ones where you have to do two of them, so the rest of those are probably going to be the limiting excess reactant problems. Again, I have two videos. This will be number 3, and it will go in week 5 videos. So let's say we have, I'm just making up numbers, 115 grams of iron, and I'm going to combine it with 318 grams of this, which is sulfur. And maybe we want to figure out how many, we'll go moles on this. So we'll shorten our process down a little bit. So what we will do, we will set this up. In sentence form, it'll say we have 115 grams of iron, which is combining with 318 grams of sulfur. How many moles of iron sulfide are produced? The one thing you'll notice is you will have two givens, which means you have to do 2 stoichiometry setups or conversions. So we got 115 grams of Fe. You guys remember how we cancel out the grams Fe? What's the only thing you see right now? Grams Fe. Logical to me if we're going to cancel out. So we're going to go grams of Fe. What hasn't made an appearance yet? The mole. I'm following the same process, right? Which one's the big one between the two of them? Which one's the big one? The mole. Of proud. And what is my mass of Fe, or where do I find it? How about that white sheet? Periodic table. Remember? It's our friend. We're going to round to the 10th place, so we have that right there. 55.9. Or is it 55.8? That's 55.85, right? So we'll go 55.9. We keep going. Same process. How do I cancel that one at the top? Mole, bottom. So it's kind of like using algebra again. You just have to practice it. What happens when I see mole on the bottom for the very first time? Isn't that my only place I can go from here over to here? Do you agree? You guys are quiet today. We call this a switchover. So I'm going to put this in a box. And then we'll do our mole thing, right? Mole. Questions? How many moles of Fe do I have? 16. How many moles of this do I have? 8. So I'm going to put my numbers down here. 16, 8. Since I'm going to moles, that is my last step, because we are here. Any questions? It's pretty easy. Let's go ahead and do this one here. So we took care of this guy here. We're going to move on to the next one because that's my second given. I have 318 grams of S8. By the way, we're going to do calculation after we're done because anybody can do calculation. Except maybe I when I hit the same button many times. Now we're going to follow pattern, what goes on the bottom like it usually does. We're not creative, what goes on the bottom? Grams of sulfur. What hasn't made any appearance yet? No mole. Which one's the big one? The mole. Man, sounds like we do that all the time. The mass of sulfur is 32 times 1 times 8, which is 256.8. You just find sulfur and multiply by 8. What's going to go on the bottom? Mole of sulfur. What do we do on that step when I see mole on the bottom for the very first time? We'll do the box thing, right? Or the switch over thing. Same steps. I don't ever change it. What's going to go on the top? We're still doing the mole thing, right? Moles of this, right? Right? All we do is match up now on our equation, balanced equation. How many moles of S8 do I have? 3. How many moles of Fe2S3 do we have? 8. We're right, aren't we where we're supposed to be on that? Right? Now the characteristic of this, make sure you listen, you have to go to the same unit and the same product. If it tells you to do it in grams, of course, you do it in grams. If it tells you to do it in moles, then you just go with the flow and do it in moles. You do follow the same process. So you guys remember the box, right? You also need to remember that this inside the box is the only place I can have different numbers, including 1. So you notice different numbers. Anything outside the box, 1 mole. Okay? And always follow pattern. So let's go ahead and calculate these guys. If you can do 1, you can do 2. But this is, of course, a practice thing. You can't fake your way through it. Because I always look at the numbers anyway. That would be my answer on that one. Now all we're doing is just adding a little additional things to this. But what we see right here is what we've been doing, right? So I'm not changing out anything. Now what they're going to ask for a question is how many how many moles of Fe2S3 are produced? You have 2 separate answers. So let's go back to empirical formula. We divided by the mass, and then what did we do? What was my second step? Well, you got two separate numbers. You got one higher, one lower. What did we divide by? Was it the higher one or the lower one? The higher one? It was the lower one. So what would your answers be between the two of them? The lower one, right? So that would be your answer. If you can do stoichiometry problems, you do two of them. Whatever your answer is, the lowest one, that's the correct answer. Now, the lowest one also would be called a limiting reactant. So which one is my limiting reactant? We don't say the number, we say the thing. We call that an LR, or a limiting reactant, because it's the lowest. And then my other one must be the other one, which we call an excess reactant. So we got SA. The symbol's just a little bit different. We do XR for excess reactant. Okay? Now I'm just going to give you a practical one for this. So make sure to listen. Let's say you have a car and you want to drive it. You put in 10 gallons of gas. And we use oxygen to burn, right? So you got one that's going to be a limiting and one's going to be an excess. So you get in the car and you start driving. You want to drive 2,000 miles. Is your car going to make it that far? That's an easy question. Does your car get over 100 miles per gallon? Obviously not, right? So what's going to eventually happen when you're driving your car? Well, you drive. What happens? You won't make it, so the car stops, right? Guess what your limiting reactant is? Gasoline. Because eventually when it runs out, your reaction stops. Any questions on that? Kind of makes sense to me. Okay, you will see other videos.